Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. This was a crummy day, so this is going to be somewhat of a 420, but it's not going to be the same way as it normally is. This is going to be a political 420, and I say that to say, it's something that should be discussed. And I think it's a profound discussion, even though it doesn't necessarily sound all that profound. It sounds mundane. One of my subscribers responded to one of my videos. I think it was the Demex video. And his response was damn good. I mean, it's Twitter, so it's only so many characters. But his response was extraordinarily good. And I said, yes, this is a good point. We need to talk. We should discuss. And he immediately backed away from the discussion. Like, oh, whoa, no, I don't want to discuss. No, dude. In the same way that I deal with my wife when we're having a back and forth, and I'm like, all right, fine, let's talk about it. He's like, oh, that's okay. I don't want to talk about it. Yeah, let's talk about it. It's an extraordinarily good point, which is why I want to talk about it. This was the tweet. Let's see, right here, Frey Lesnar. I agree with you, but what about the people who have children that need the American Care Act, Obamacare? What will you say to them? Some families can't afford scorched earth. And now, this is in response to a video, and not just videos, probably a series of videos. I've said recently, if I was a preacher, this is my sermon. This kind of scorched earth policy of dealing with politics. This thing of things have gone too far, where you're beyond this thing of incrementalism, and the political system, for the most part, has seized up. I'm taking Chris Hedges' term, has seized up. I agree with him. Playing this game is a fail. And I went with this idea of scorched earth. If you want the Democratic Party to change in any capacity whatsoever, you need a third party. I know that sounds paradoxical, but yeah, it's true. Ultimately, you need to drag that party to represent its philosophical basis. If you don't, nothing takes place. You continue with the same system that you have now, and that system cannot go on in perpetuity. And he makes a good point. He's like, look, I have kids, I have a family. Man, scorched earth shit. You're putting Republicans in office. He responded, later on when I said we should discuss, he's like, I love to discuss. I'm afraid my voice doesn't sound as good as yours, but I could get through that. Timing will be the next issue. I'm a service sector guy and this type, etc., etc. Essentially, he backs away from the discussion at a certain point, but it's a good discussion, which is why I'm bringing it up. I would say that he is absolutely right. That the reason why people vote Democrat is not because they love voting Democrat. There is a reason behind it. There's an underlying logic to it. Otherwise, people wouldn't necessarily do it. The underlying logic is, oh my God, these other people are maniacs. Some of them are racist. And the last thing I want is for them to have any power in government that they can either put some kind of religious dogma or some kind of fiscal terrorism on the population. That makes sense. You can bask in the apathy of the Democrats, but the other guys are maniacs. So yeah, there's a certain logic. Even if I know this guy isn't necessarily what he says he is, at the very least, he's not sexist or racist. And he will leave me to my devices. And every so often, some incremental measure will pass, even though he will fuck me over financially. That's the logic. I mean, this guy's bad. The other guy is abysmally worse. The other guy's abysmally worse. I don't even know if he washes his hands. That's how bad they are. That type of stuff. Fair enough. I get it. Totally get it. Look, what I would say is, the party who has represented themselves as the people for the worker has failed you. They have lied to you. And they have done things and played this game where they will be least worse. That's the game. That is the scam. The scam is that we are least worse. We are apathetic. We can say all of this stuff only because of how bad the other guys are. What you're grading them by is on the curve. It's like having everybody in class, or the highest score in class, with a 45. And so you give that guy an A. I'm asking you, is that what you want to persist in perpetuity? And do you believe that's getting better or worse? Meaning, at the point where the Democrats put up Hillary Clinton to be their candidate, and not just put him up, chose. It chose. There's something disturbing when these things that are somewhat implicit become explicit, when this is just the way things are. We don't care about the democratic process. We're the Democratic Party, but we don't care about the democratic process. We're choosing Hillary Clinton because it's her turn. That is disturbing. That is immensely disturbing. Beyond it being immensely disturbing, take the election out for the moment. You have 4 kids. Did I hear that right? You have kids. Yeah, people have children. You understand those kids are going to get $50,000 of debt put on their heads just for going to school. Who do you think, between the two parties, who do you think has the responsibility of making sure that wasn't the case? Who do you believe? I'm making this point that the things that need to take place within this country that most of the population wants, like if you go and just ask this particular person, let's say take out parties, take out labels, should XYZ take place? Most of those things are to the left. And the party that has the responsibility of doing that is the Democratic Party. And they have failed in that responsibility. And what I'm asking you is it better to reward them for that failure because other people are maniacs, and to persist in the way things are going, or to actually change things, to actually shake things up? And I understand this thing of, oh my God, Republicans are batshit crazy, so I don't want to put those people in office. I am just making this point that if you're forever in that situation of, I must vote for whoever these guys put up, certainly you understand that you give them a free pass in that office. Like they can do whatever they want because ultimately you're terrified of the other guy. In fact, they can be even more worse knowing that you're terrified of the other guy. At which point does the individual say, yeah, I can't be a part of this. This is not getting better. This is getting worse. And I am in a quagmire because they're going to continuously do this. And if I want to have any level of respect, meaning if I want them to even acknowledge that I exist other than being some machine that votes for them, then I need to be willing to walk. I need to be willing to walk. I understand the scenario that the person puts out. I get it. But what's better? For that scenario to get perpetually worse, or for you to actually get to the point of walking and maybe actually having a scenario that's better? For example, I understand that a particular family would have kids. That family is getting hit with massive amounts of college loan debt. What about medical stuff? You understand that having Obama putting in an Affordable Care Act as opposed to having somebody actually putting out Medicare for all, more people are still without health care. So I understand some families depend on the Affordable Care Act. You still have a lot of families that don't have the Affordable Care Act or can't afford the Affordable Care Act. Whose fault is that? You think the Republican Party gives 2 shits about health care? No, they don't. Whose the responsibility lie to do that? And do you honestly believe that with 20-something million people left off the rolls, with healthcare insurance spiking, meaning the costs, for something that was supposed to already be resolved, do you believe that the Democratic Party itself is fulfilling the obligations, the philosophical obligations that the party has? Do you believe it? What about your wages? Unions have withered on the vine, even though unions were supposed to be bolstered by the Democratic Party. I'm making the point that in one capacity after the next, in the things that these guys are supposed to represent, these guys have failed. And purely because of how bad and miserable and horrible and goblinish the other party is, you've been willing to give them somewhat of a pass. Oh my God, those other guys are maniacs. I'm willing to accept whatever the Democratic Party gives. At which point does that change? At which point is the turn of the worm? Is every situation punctuated by, I'm willing to accept whatever they give me because the other guys are maniacs? When does it change? That's what I'm asking. When does it change? And by the way, do you believe it can go into perpetuity? Do you believe that Trump being in that office to some degree has something to do with how bad and miserable and how much of a failure the Democratic Party is? Your best bet, I'm just making a point, the best bet that you could come up with, if you actually care about the Democratic Party, meaning these reformists, these people who want to change the party, if you honestly believe that you want to do that, the best bet is a third party. Or the best bet is the very least being willing to say no. Or, in fact, saying no. In fact, saying no. Otherwise, they don't care. They're going to pursue the way they've been pursuing things. And there's a reason to it. You have two parties. They can say, hey, they're maniacs. You like Donald Trump? You don't like Donald Trump? Vote for us. It doesn't matter what we do. We're not going to be as bad as them. That's the case that they continuously make. The you have nowhere else to go argument. And I'm saying, if you actually want something to change in your country, if you actually want real things, if you don't want to be $20 trillion in debt, while at the exact same time having nothing to show for the $20 trillion in debt because we've been wasting that money in the military. I understand that people have families. I'm making the point that if you love your families, going the way that you're going is not the way to continue to go. That's my point. You need to change. Something needs to change. I'd argue being willing to say no is the thing that needs to change. Otherwise, they have no reason to listen to you. They have no reason to even acknowledge your presence. This perfunctory no. In that exact situation, the guy said, I agree with you. They're horrible and miserable. They don't get anything done and they lie continuously. But he beats me. He slaps me. He throws me down the stairs. He cheats on me. He drinks too much. He snorts coke. But I can't leave him. I can't leave him. He says nobody will love me if I leave him. So I need to stay here. It's a terrifying world out there. And I'm better off with this crack smoking, the guy who beats me up and the guy who cheats on me, the fornicator. That's the argument. That's the argument I'm hearing. Yes, everything you're saying is true, but the problem in that statement is the but. He will be the way that he is for as long as he knows that you're going to be there. That's the point. That's the point. And just for an analogy for the moment, not an analogy, of course I gave an analogy, but it's like working at a job that you hate, and yet you're terrified that if you leave that job, you're not going to get anything else, or you're not going to find something in the thing that you actually like. What are the consequences of you working a job that you absolutely hate, that you find to be absolutely miserable because you're terrified of something else? And is it absolutely true that there is no capacity for you to find anything that you may actually like that may suit you a little bit better for as long as in your head, I'm stuck at this location? Change is not easy. That's not my point. And we've built up this kind of karma of sorts over the period of time that we've been in this country, and that we've allowed that party to do what it does. We've abdicated all responsibility as citizenry to the government itself. We've took our hands off the wheel. As lefties, for the most part, having this responsibility of being the conscience of the nation, we've abdicated that responsibility. You don't believe that there's going to be a penalty for the abdication of that responsibility? For example, if right now we decide, okay, we're going to do a green energy new deal, you understand there is still a consequence. There's still stuff built up over the 10 years before anything positive could take place. There's a consequence for things. There's a consequence for letting things linger, particularly when you get into the standpoint of a societal scale. I am not saying that having these maniacs getting elected is great. I am saying being willing to allow that maniac to get elected has your best capacity of changing things to the positive. Not in the short term, no. Not in the short term, no. But the only vehicle right now that you have of affecting anything in this country is, unfortunately, the burning ship of the Democratic Party. You have one or two options. The party persists the way it is, with this kind of attrition damage to the society itself, or you try to change it. And once you get to the point of, okay, how do you change it? What levers, what powers, what bricks, what do I have at my disposal to get that thing to change? And you would quickly come to that answer of being nothing from a positive standpoint. From a more dynamic standpoint, you have the capacity to make them lose. That's your brick. That's your rock. That's your stick. That's your bat. That's the thing that you have at your disposal to affect change. Having the courage to say no and let them fail if they need to fail. You have two options. Either they bend, meaning they come your way, or they persistently lose, and something else will spring up to replace the losers. Right now, they've lost all throughout the United States, what, like 1,100 seats. No power within the federal government. Their legitimacy has pretty much eroded and evaporated. Why on earth would you continuously support something that's that weak, that's that much of a failure, and prop up status quo when you can actually have the potential for actual change? I'm not saying it's easy, I'm just saying it's necessary. There's a difference in those things. 16 is not too bad. For whatever reason, my live commentary goes longer. You know, it's 6 o'clock. D-Mar and Jamal, your boss calls and wants to know why you're at work. You know, it's 6 o'clock. It's 6 o'clock here. Christy Brown. Complaining is pointless. Go green so we can start a future. Buster Peak. Butthurt Clintonites are loud but small group. Oh, Butthurt Clintonites, yeah. They could say the same about us. Behemoth. Christy Brown, I'm a Green Party member now, but what next? We need to get these local candidates elected. Yes, you do. I always hear people from the Green Party make that point of like, hey, what about the Greens? And it's like, there's nothing wrong with the Greens. But you need to be able to get elected. Your legitimacy is being elected or getting elected. Zox Ox. They would never surrender their power because they know once they get power, we're going to lock them up. Well, there's two reasons. So, yes, these guys are criminals in many cases. Or I would make the point, taking cash and doing favors. They're being bribed. Unfortunately, that's been instantiated in your society. It's like, it's one thing when it's implicit. Like when you know, okay, these guys are probably working behind the scenes. There's probably some kind of collusion in the things that they're doing. When it becomes explicit, oh man, that's problematic. So yes, this guy is going to get $1 billion to run in a race. This other person is going to take a bunch of money, and this other person is going to do favors for the people who are giving them a bunch of money. Here in Virginia, we have pretty much a monopoly in power, almost a monopoly. And that power company could give money to the candidates themselves. Now, certainly, come on now. The candidates themselves are working on legislation for that particular power company, and the power company is giving those same candidates money. And we're supposed to believe that these guys have such integrity that in no way is the money that they're being given affecting the votes. Mind you, to the people who are giving them the money. It's insanity. What I suspect they're more fearful of, if you break this idea that the neolibs have made or have prospered, that they're least worse. If there's something else that's just better, then the least worst argument goes away. The reason they don't necessarily want these guys in office is because they're okay with the Republicans fucking up. They don't necessarily want to see somebody actually be effective at government. That makes them look bad. That allows them to lose their seats. And that gets rid of this argument of, this is the best we can do. This is the best you can hope for. This is the best you can get. This is the best case scenario. At the point where you show that that's not true, you break the myth. Once the myth is broken, it shows them to be a farce. That's my point. People have said that they would rather Bernie Sanders to lose as opposed to, they would rather a Republican win as opposed to Bernie Sanders. There's some logic to that. There's some logic to it. this guy represents the actual left. If the actual left is doing things that shows the faux left was full of it, well, it shows the faux left was full of it. It makes him look bad. It makes him look bad. Robert Bouquet Ray. I really thought Greens would do better. Bernie folks should have voted Jill. The same logic applies. I mean, that guy who wrote that wasn't crazy. I mean, he has a point. He's like, oh my God, these guys are maniacs. These guys are maniacs. So it's not insane to say, okay, I'm terrified, I'm going to vote for so-and-so. That's not insane in the short term. Like in the immediate of the moment, like in the immediacy of it, yeah, it makes sense. But when you look over the course of 40, 50 years, what has that accomplished for you? Your unions have been decimated. Jobs have been shipped overseas. These guys have been passing trade deals that put a knife in the back of unions. The Trans-Pacific Partnership was going to give up sovereignty to multinational corporations. What I'm asking you is, how has this been beneficial to you? That's what I'm asking. The one piece of legislation that you got, or that you were supposed to get, was healthcare. And you still have 20, 30 million people without healthcare. You have other people still going bankrupt. You have rates that are spiking just before the election. Rates spiked. Some cases 50%. How is this beneficial to you? How is this beneficial to you? That's what I'm asking. That's what I'm asking. Clinton was a wasted vote. Yes, it was a wasted vote. It was a wasted vote. Centrists hate progressives. Yeah, because it makes them, shows them failures. It's like they're half measures. You must understand, if you're being attacked from the left, it makes you look bad. It makes you look like you're insecure or lacking something, because you are lacking something. You're less pure or less honest than the other person who's from the left of you. Yeah, the faux left dislikes it. Jamal, why do you think Democrats think they still need corporate cash when Bernie Sanders proved that to be false? Are they biased or brainwashed? No, they're corrupt. They're corrupt. Come on, call it what it is. It's not brainwashed. If they wanted to run in a particular way, they know they could run in a particular way. They've come up with a business model. That business model is, we're going to take cash and we're going to do favors for that cash. Now, there are two parts. One part is, these are the same people who they interact with, meaning as you're coming up into your political class of sorts, they hobnob with a certain demographic. So that's one point. But the other point is, whether they accept it or not, they're corrupt. They're corrupt. You run in office, you spend 70% of your time talking to the plutocrats, because those are the people who have the cash. And you've told yourself, or you've shown yourself, or at the very least the business model that you've been accustomed to running with is, we can take large donations, we can lean a particular way, and we can lie to progressives. That's the business model. That is their business model. Now, Bernie Sanders has shown that business model to be ridiculous. And ridiculous is the wrong word for it. He's shown it to be unnecessary. He was outraising Hillary Clinton month after month after month. They weren't even out of the primaries. He was outraising Hillary Clinton. So it's doable. It's doable. What the left just needs to get their head around is, they're just not that into you. It has nothing to do with winning elections at this point. Yes, they want to win elections, but they want to win elections the way they want to win elections. They want to win elections the way they want to. They have a certain ideological belief system. That belief system revolves around markets. They use whatever they can use to get you to vote for them. That's brass tacks. If they wanted to run a particular way, they could. They don't. They choose not to. They hated Bernie Sanders, not because Bernie Sanders was, they were biased against Sanders. They hated what he represented. He showed them for what they were. Full of it. He showed them for what they were. Pat Hacker, Christy Brown, I used to be a Green. I saw how the party pushed Nader out and wasted his potential 17 years and not one Green in Congress. Pat Hacker has a point. Pat Hacker has a point. Pat Hacker has a damn good point. I mean, you have to ask that question. Why can't the Greens get elected? And I understand the parties and everything else. That's fair. But come on. saying the Greens need to support, the Greens will have to make sure that they can get across to the public that they're viable. Unless you can get across the perceptual hurdle of viability, you're going to have trouble. That's just the truth. How would this California audit cost? How much would the California audit cost? Oh God, I have no idea. They've pushed those costs extraordinarily high to prevent those things from taking place. Any solution will come solely as a result of unity, regardless of where we decide to go. Unity, yes, but look, you have the Dem Enter and the Dem Exit group. If you were looking for a way to change things rapidly, it would be for the Dem Enter group to say, we're done. You need to get across the show of force, this kind of monster show of force. And by force, I just mean saying no. That's where your unity needs to be, man. Until you're willing, until it is full well understood from flesh to bone, understood in a way that breathing is understood, that you no longer agree with the way things are going. Until you get to the point where you can say no, then nothing else matters. Nothing else matters. They'll go with this idea of we have the base, we're going to con everybody else, people are terrified of Trump, we're going to play to those demographics. Status quo forever. I am immensely curious on how Nina Turner, who's been trying to shame the party into doing the right thing, how Bernie Sanders, how all these other people who are in the Democratic bandwagon, how are you going to get that party to do something that that party doesn't want to do? If you don't have leverage. If you don't have leverage. Now, it's one thing if you just win, if you just beat their candidates. Winning is its own reward in that sense. Meaning winning is its own justification. But if you can't win, if they don't believe that you can win, you don't have leverage. That's all I'm getting at. Your leverage is being willing to say no. And for them to understand you're willing to say no. Understand it. I understand this thing of people being terrified. But what's the quote? If you're willing to give up fear, or if you're willing to give up security because of fear, you're not going to have either, or I can't, I'm messing the quote. I'm immensely mangling that quote. But it's making this point that fear is being used against you. Fear is being used against you in a rather hazardous way. What that tells me is that we need to make sure Democrats keep losing until they're irrelevant. Then a new party will take its place. How else do we get a new party, right? So, yes or no? Yes and no. A new party is the threat. Starting a new party is to some degree a threat. Whether they change or not, at the very least you have the new party. You may not necessarily be able to get to the point of having a new party to win, but you saying no makes them lose. And at the very least being willing to allow them to lose. That's a big fucking brick. That's a big brick. It's not that I'm on this bandwagon of let's vote for Republican. That's not what it is. I'm making this point that until they understand that you're willing to allow the Republican to win, nothing changes. Your vote is complicit. Your vote is automatic. You might as well be a robot. At this point, you're not in any kind of representative government. You're just terrified of the other guy. It's not that you go out and force them to lose. It's being willing to allow them to lose. And being vocal and known that it's understood. It's this idea of the other. Like, until people get in this head of, like, I'll vote for Jill Stein if other people voted for Jill Stein. Jill Stein might have gotten 20% of the vote if you had that number of people who said, I would do this if the other did this. But instead, I think she got like 1%. She wasn't considered viable. So people didn't necessarily want to, quote unquote, waste their vote. Now, if you have a Democratic Party that full well believes that it can continue the way things are, we're going to put Tom Perez in that spot. We're going to put Hillary Clinton up. We're going to cheat Bernie Sanders. We're going to purge progressives, etc., etc., etc. If they believe that after all of this has been exposed, after all of this has come to light, that they can continuously win because they can just move on and the public is so terrified that it doesn't matter what they do. Is that the precedent you really want to set? Is that really the precedent you want to set? You're so beholden and terrified that it doesn't matter what they do. They got your vote. That is a terrifying precedent. If that same party understood that, oh my God, we lost the governorship. Oh my God, people was upset with us in the way that things are going. Oh my God, we can't get elected. You understand that that's a stronger position to be in regards to forcing the party to change, as opposed to, oh my God, we're terrified. Okay, I'll do anything. You have my vote. The latter is immensely weak. The latter is immensely weak. And the sad part is, you're still going to get the status quo. You have this soothing normality, as opposed to actually taking the opportunity to try to get something substantial accomplished. This is your opportunity. And instead, people are so terrified, they're running back to the Democrats. That's a bad precedent. That's all I'm saying. It's not so much of saying, yes, this is going to be a third party. It's being willing to say, yes, I'm okay with a third party. And no, you're not getting my vote in the way things are going. You do not have my approval. That's a big fucking deal. That's monstrous. That's a massive sea change. Eval in 79. I worked with a lot of Jewish people. Many voted for Trump. Agar Sabernaut. It's the congressional committees that run the roost. Yeah. So she makes another point. I don't know if you're he or she, so I'm not going to use pronouns, but pronouns are. I think it's a picture. Yeah, I think it's a picture that makes me feel like it's female. But whatever. Cyber Argonaut has a point. This is saying of these committees run the roost and everything else, that ultimately these people need to be on the committee, and if you're a third party, you're not going to get a committee seat. Yes, but certainly that can't be the justification and not push for a third party. I mean, that's like saying in perpetuity things are the way they are because things have been the way they've been. That can't be the argument. That can't be the argument. You've had other parties. You've had other parties. So it's not like it's impossible to do. Captain Obvious. Robert Bouquet, right? Yeah, I can make obvious points and it's funny. I can make complicated points and it's even funnier. Captain Obvious. Garnome. Of course, these facts are beyond obvious. They hope to make Trump so toxic he would lose and therefore no need to reform. Yes, agreed. Agreed. Garnome, you're not of like mind on this. X Factor 541. Green Party. Any party discourages nuanced thinking. It encourages complacency. I like that. Yeah, agreed. It's soothing complacency. Yeah. Yeah. They're so terrified of the other, that apathy. Mind you, like it's an aggravating apathy because I know you're apathetic and I know you're going to get out here and you're going to say nice things and lie to me, even though we know you're apathetic. Why accept that? If you're the union, why not have somebody who represents your interests, like vociferously, unabashedly represents your interests? You're unions. Why wouldn't you do that? You're workers. Aren't you supposed to support workers? Why wouldn't you have a party that represents your interests in that way? Like, I don't understand that part. It's been like 40, 50 years. You've worked with these guys, and these guys have fucked you over royally. Why are you with them? I would say it's complacency. I would say it's this kind of, oh my God, these other guys are maniacs, so I need to do whatever I need to do to put Republicans in office. And then when Republicans get in office, Democrats can say, okay, these guys are maniacs. The public just needs a taste of how bad they are, and they'll come back to us. We don't have to change anything. In fact, we can be even worse. Yeah, this is a game. This is a scam. Absolute scam. Jamal messaged me about a moderated panel discussion. A few of us are trying to get a show going. Jamal messaged me. Oh, message, not messaged. Yeah, all right, dude. That's fine. Hit me up. Just let me know when. Just let me know when. Behemoth. Let's follow the labor union and Nick Brana to Progressive Coalition. I like that. And I honestly hope that Nick Brana, Our Revolution, the unions, I hope all of those people are interacting with one another. Honestly. I even hope Sanders is behind the scenes interacting with them. Because I would hope that Sanders understood that if he wants to fix the Democratic Party, he needs a club. Meaning he needs a third party. If you've noticed, in the same way that Republicans have used progressives to bash Democrats over the heads, they do it. They don't necessarily have any love for progressives. They do it because it's a brick that they can use to hit them with. if you want to move them further to the left, having something to their left that threatens them is the best case to go. That starts with the ability to say no. I don't mean to belabor that point. It's just a big fucking deal. And I think I'm perfectly right on it. And I've yet to hear the argument saying that I'm wrong. A new party would benefit the top hitters like Nina, Tulsi, Bernard for quick examples. Yes. Like an all-star team, a new party needs name recognition. Agreed. Agreed. Hard for me to fathom the right strategy right now. Hijacking Democratic Party seems easier than pushing forward a third party. Do progressives have the unity right now to push for a unified strategy? It depends. If you're saying people should go into the Democratic Party, the answer is no. Because at that point, you're just going with the same old, same old. In my mind, those people are appeasers. It's Democratic appeasers. The reformists of the bunch. The lefties who despise the Democratic Party but believe they can reform it in some way. And yet have nothing to show for it. There have been some wins in elections. Look, it's one or two things. Like I said, you either beat them outright, meaning you put your candidates in office and take their candidates out of office. That's one way. That's one way. The other way is willing to say no and have a third party to threaten the other party. Both of those ways start with leverage and threats. You need some real, man. Otherwise, nothing changed. They have no reason to. Names fill stadiums in the best way to put, like James said, names do fill stadiums. Bernie isn't leaving Democrats. I think Tulsi would leave before any of them. Yeah. Bernie won't support shit unless it has a Democratic label. D. Martin. Skeptic of the bunch. Our revolution endorsed independents and Greens too. They do, but come on. Nina Turner went to the Democratic Party with a list in order to shame the Democratic Party. She was outside the building. She was shaming a building. Why was she outside the building? Do you think she was outside that building just in a random way? Like, do you think it was an odd occurrence? She went for coffee and all of a sudden ended up in front of the Democratic National Committee's building and she decided to shame that building. No, she did it because ultimately she's in the Democratic Party. Many of the candidates, most of the candidates they're pushing are Democrats. I understand they may support Greens and everything else, but I'm saying being willing to be overt, not flirt, not play footsie under the table, being overt about it. It will make a bigger statement than this thing of, I watched a video showing, this thing of maybe we need to go with third party. We might need to go with third party. Maybe we need to go with third party. No, be overt. All of these groups need to be overt. The Young Turks needs to be overt. Justice Democrats need to be somewhat overt. Yeah, I get it. They're running as Justice Democrats. I'm just making the point that if that fails, it needs to be somewhat overt. That no, we're no longer doing this. As long as it goes on where you're willing to accept anything that they give out, then they're going to give you whatever they want to give you. Knowing full well and good confidence, you're going to be willing to accept it. Our revolution takes super PAC money. That's why people like Nick Brown left our revolution. Pat Hacker. I don't know if that's true. That's maybe. Somebody would need to look that up to nail that down. Frey Dags. She was outside the building because they wouldn't let her in. Frey Dags. I know. I'm making a point. I'm saying, somebody made the point saying, well, our revolution supports Greens and independents. I'm making the point that I know, but if it was exclusive to Green and independents, the lion's share of that are Democrats. And the reason she was outside that building was because the focus of our revolution is Democrats. They're trying to take over the Democratic Party. Behemoth. More like, how do you get TYT and Cal to realize Democrats are not the vehicle? Do they have to lose in 2018 and 2020? Will it even matter, though? Now, Cal voted Jill Stein. To be fair. Now, whether they know it's the vehicle or not, here's the thing. You don't have to win. That's the point I'm trying to make. It's not about winning. It's about making them lose or having the capacity to make them lose. That's the point. Now, Justice Democrats running their candidates, if some of their candidates win, fair enough. But if they're trying to take back the Democratic Party, then you're going to have to take on Democrats, meaning you're going to have to win those primaries. if you lose the primaries, if you lose, is Justice Democrats going to support Joe Manchin? Like, if Joe Manchin loses, are they going to say, okay, we lost, Paula Swearengin lost, so Paula Swearengin needs to support Joe Manchin now, or at TYT we're going to support Joe Manchin now? Like, I'm asking, at which point do you just say no? At which point do you just say no? Them being willing to say no has more bang for their buck than putting candidates up. That can be argued. I would make that point. I would make that case. I would make that case. One is the threat of losing to a Republican. Joe Manchin went on TYT not because of Paula Swearengin, because he was terrified of losing to the Republican. That's why. He wanted those votes. Joe Manchin is not going on TYT for his health. He would prefer probably not to be there. He went there to make his case, to say, hey, I need you to vote for me. I need you to vote for me. Whatever bad you think I am, the Republican in West Virginia is worse, I need you to vote for me. That had nothing to do with Paula Swearengin. That had everything to do with Joe Manchin scared of the Republican. And if he's scared of the Republican, that is a bet that you need to use. Otherwise, Joe Manchin is going to remain Joe Manchin. Behemoth, I see what you're saying. Thanks. Yeah, thank you. I think what I'm saying makes sense. Cal voted green because of New York. Garno, Chink and TYT are useless as vehicles of change. They're happy profiting and gaining marginal influence as a result of the discontent. Yeah, there is an incentive there for that, if we're being fair. I've always said that for the most part, I think their intentions were earnest. And I still do. I think their intentions are earnest. But as human beings, yeah, if you can get a little political influence, you're probably feeling yourself. This kind of heroic, I'm going to go in and I'm going to save it. We're going to take justice back. It's like, okay, calm down. Calm down. We're justice. I understand. I get it. That being said, do I believe that they're to the left? Yes, I do believe they're to the left. I do believe that. For instance, do I believe that Paula Swearengin, if she gets in office, she's better than Joe Manchin? Oh, fuck yes. If I was in West Virginia, would I vote for her? Fuck yes. Would her having Justice Democrats with Sandra Day matter? Not one iota. Not one iota. Does she represent my interests? That's where it begins and ends. Do I believe they're going to represent my interests? Yeah. It's for me, it's just, I don't see how you have leverage. That's all. I don't see how you have leverage. If it was a situation where Joe Manchin thought Paula Swearengin may beat Joe Manchin would scoot to the left. He would scoot to the left. If Joe Manchin understood that Joe Manchin was going to lose that election if he did not get a percentage of vote that was for progressives, and that every progressive network was saying, don't vote for Joe Manchin, do you think Joe Manchin would scoot to the left? You goddamn right Joe Manchin would scoot to the left. He wouldn't have a choice. He'll be trying to protect his seat. It's not necessarily about going through the effort and putting a third party up. It's being willing and understanding, or having everybody understand that that's on the agenda. That's on the table. The nuclear weapons are on the table. That's the point. And until they realize the nuclear weapons are on the table, they're going to continue to do the shit that they've always done. Why would they change? What would be their impetus to change at that point? They would have none. That's all. August Abernathy, Trump 2020. Luca Clemente, I just said no back in 92 when I voted for Perot. Obama tricked me in 2008. The thing is, it can't be a one-off thing. It can't be the one person. Like, it can't be this one person with a trumpet. That's not going to work. It has to be in mass. Anything that takes place needs to be done in mass. Anything that takes place. Pat Hacker, I agree, but it's naive to not consider the repercussions of it all. Oh, agreed. There are repercussions. There are repercussions. Don't get me wrong. But what are the long-term repercussions of doing nothing and remaining the way things are? For example, let's take the union example. Let's take unions. Unions in what? 50s, 60s, and 70s are thriving. At a certain point, Democrats tell unions you have nowhere else to go, and because you have nowhere else to go, you're stuck with us. So we can do whatever we want. So yes, I'm going to pass NAFTA. Yes, I'm going to get rid of Glass-Steagall. Yes, I'm going to pass these other trade deals, and you are not going to do anything about it. Not just that. You're going to have the indignity of supporting me in the next elections. Why? How is that a position? Like, how is that a place to be in? Over the years, Democrats have been apathetic towards unions, and they have been attacked relentlessly, year after year after year. And with that logic of you got to vote for the Democrat, you got to support the Democrat, they have withered on the vine. They have withered on the vine. Now, you have Trump in that office right now, regardless of what you did. Regardless. Because the thing has been going back and forth because Democrats don't represent what they say they represent. They've been in this thing of Republicans have taken office. People are terrified of Republicans because it's like they're shocked. Oh my God, we forgot how batshit crazy these people were. Put in the Democrat, put in the Democrat. You're being scammed. And in this process, the unions have been attacked relentlessly and have gone smaller and smaller and smaller. And with the unions being destroyed, so goes labor. So goes labor. Half of the country doesn't have $5 to $100 to their name. Think about that. If half of the country, I think it was 66%, got a $500 car bill, let's say something happened to the car, they couldn't afford to pay it. Your jobs have been shipped overseas. These traders have put a knife in the back of labor. The Trans-Pacific Partnership was going to be a knife in the gut. Obama was going to twist that knife. This is the Democratic Party. So when we're having this conversation about, let's talk about the repercussions. Yes, let's talk about the repercussions. But let's not talk about these repercussions in the moment. I'm pretty sure somebody from labor probably said, hey, this other Republican that's going to get in office, that guy's crazy. We got to get George Bush out that office. We need to support Bill Clinton. Good job. We need to support Barack Obama. Good job. Good job. Did you get the Employee Free Choice Act? This thing that would have allowed the increased number of unions? No, you did not. Was you going to pass something that would have decimated unions to a higher degree that they've been decimated over the past 20, 30 years? That answer is yes, he was. In the moment, yes, I understand Mitt Romney is a fucking maniac and it's a better choice. But what happens over the 20 years, over the 30 years, over the long haul? Those unions have been decimated. When Scott Walker was destroying those unions in Wisconsin, Democrats stood by. They stood pat. So, at best, they've been ineffectual. At best, they've been apathetic. So yes, if you're going to ask me this question of, let's talk about the consequences. Let's talk about the consequences. Let's talk about the consequences. So, yes. Hillary, thank you for not voting against her. Bob Ramirez, right. Hillary Clinton thanks you for not voting against her. I didn't vote against her. I voted for Jill Stein. I voted for the person who was going to represent my interests. You're acting as if votes are just relative. They're not. Hillary Clinton is not the vote. Donald Trump is not necessarily the vote. All of those people are vying for a particular spot. It's no relative vote. I mean, votes are relative. Angela Willery, except if you've been without heat for years and you have nothing to lose. Yeah. Every time someone like Hillary loses, they will feel our wrath. Pat Hacker. I like you use the term wrath. They would feel our wrath. It's like a Batman character. I love it. Angel Willery. This was the first election I refused to vote for the lesser of two evils and would continue. Fucking A, Angel Willery. Robert Pouquet-Ray. If furnace breaks, they could be dangerous for many. Okay, I don't know the context. Zox Sox. Robert, it's not the establishment we're waking up. It's the other Americans. Yeah, agreed. I like that. Yeah, I agree. It's, yeah, people are waking up. It's not, the establishment knows what it's doing. This quote-unquote establishment. They know they're fucking people over. I mean, granted, there's a facade over top of it because they need the public to keep the way the public is. Otherwise, it's not the establishment. You've gotten rid of that world order, or that natural order of in regards to the country, or unnatural order, I should say. No, the issue is people are saying, "Oh my God, this is what they've been doing." Yeah, it's people. Bane voice. Yeah, that's the Bane voice. Oh, I can't do the Bane voice. I can't do the Bane voice. I'm sorry. I have a Batman voice. I can't do the Bane voice. I'm not even gonna try. Robert Pouquet-Ray, I'm committing on those living check to check and outsourcing of work. Yeah, agreed. James Wilkins, when you live in the sticks and your income is fixed, propane. That's a harsh. That's a bad place to be. Angela Willery, good point, Pat. Maybe I'm looking for the obvious. James Parrish, Yeah, like speak truth to power. Power already knows the truth. They don't care, right? Speak truth to your neighbors. Fucking A. Garden Gnome. I blame Trump. I don't need context. And I can use this universally. Lazy fuck. Hashtag lazy fuck. In case you missed what he was saying, he's being sarcastic. I blame Trump. I don't need the context. Lazy fucks. Yeah, it's easy to blame Trump. It's like, what are you resisting and when did you start? I ask that question all the time. What are you resisting and when did you start? And did you notice that the thing that you're saying that you're resisting was taking place in the last administration? They didn't notice that. They didn't notice that at all. Dimebag TV. 2018 will be prelude to what's to come. Let them lose. Agreed. Agreed. James Wilkins, I read that like a song. Cocaine. Okay, Jim. Captain Obvious, don't tease us like that. Do the Batman voice. I can do the Batman voice. I can't do the Bane voice. I can't do the Bane voice. Yep, you've got it. These people are lazy. See, I can't tell if they're lazy or if it's cultural. Like if it's, I vote Democrat, so that's what I'm going to go. Donald Trump has an awful tone. He doesn't say things in a way that we like him to say things. So we don't like Donald Trump and we don't want context at all. Yeah, some of this stuff is cultural. Some of this stuff is their own illusions, their reality box. I refuse to vote for warmongers. If that means voting third, then that's that. Yeah, agreed. Agreed. Vote your interests. Vote your interests. Absolutely. We are the DNC. Resistance is futile. We will add your identity politics to our own. It's funny. You may have the Democratic functionaries that are out there like throwing blows on Twitter, but the party itself in every situation has its arms open. Now, you're angry, you're aggressive, and it just wants to hug. It just wants to hug it out. They would like to add you to their collectiveness. Mind you, you're not going to get anything for being added. Yes, they're going to, you know, what's the word? Pander to you and everything else. But they're going to continue to take the checks. They're going to cash those checks. And they're going to bend in the interest of the people who are giving them the checks. It's just words for you. It's legislation for them. When do you say no? When do you say no? Jane Wilkins' assimilation is toxic. In this case, yes. Some people chose not to woke up. It's comfortable inside that bubble until somebody goes out and pop. What was the word? Soothing? There's a term Martin Luther King used. It was like soothing incrementalism or something. Like it's an awesome turn of a phrase. Or the soothing euthanasia of incrementalism. Something to that effect. But making this point that when you jump into the pool, it's shocking. It's like, oh my God, it's fucking cold. But at a certain point, it settles down. And you actually enjoy the swim. I'm making this, any change is jarring. I get it. Any change is jarring. Guess what? You got Donald Trump anyway. You got Donald Trump anyway. Now, are you going to use this to good ends? Meaning, oh my God, we got Donald Trump. Let's see what we're going to do to change this particular vehicle. I just make the point that if you really want to change the vehicle, you do it from the outside. You threaten the shit out of it. Of course they want you to be a part of it. Of course they want to hug you. Of course they want to add you. They want your vote. They just don't want to do anything for it. Got to remember that most people aren't interested in politics and independent thinking like you and others like us. Most people only get their news and talking points from mainstream media, therefore division. Yeah, they're robots. They're robots. It's not fully their fault. I mean, ultimately, you know, you work 40, 50 hours a day. You put somebody in office, you do your job, you assume that they're going to do theirs. You also assume that they have a certain amount of integrity that they don't have. Like, it's like this normal human interaction that people have. These guys don't interact that way. Like in the things like ethics, integrity, morality, saying stuff and meaning the things that you say, those things don't apply. It's politics. People don't necessarily realize that. They play into this facade as if these guys are being earnest and honest. It's not the case. Dominique Buscemi. Bread and circus. Yes, bread and circus indeed. Yeah. play your Xbox and eat your Cheerios. Yeah. The only difference in this case, they're not giving away bread. People are barely making ends meet. They're barely getting the bread they got. If Wall Street penalizes ethics, it's no surprise. We need to focus on healthcare and war. I would add corruption. I would add corruption. Look, part of the left, I would say, is to win. Now, I would say you are going to need people outside of your sandbox if you want to win. And I would argue corruption. Oh, people get on board for corruption. Not to mention you have the dual benefit of cleaning your government up. Meaning, if you make this argument that these people are bribed, these people are corrupt, we need to get rid of these, these corrupt people out of office, we need to be trust busters, we need to figure out what's going on. This took place in the 20s, by the way, in the 20s and 30s. This actually did take place. It can take place again. That focus, and I guarantee you would get people on the right. I guarantee you. Particularly if your attack on this is not partisan. It's, we just need to clean up our government, we need to get money out of politics. Once you get in office, if you win, wins beget wins. Wins beget wins. I would add corruption to whatever mix you're having a conversation about. Corruption should be there. It should be there wholeheartedly. It should be there. You should attack both parties. You should attack both parties on this. Lock her up, won the election for Trump. It didn't hurt. It didn't hurt. What parts of the federal government would you reduce in size or eliminate? I'd reduce the military budget. I'd cut the military budget like nobody's business. I'd cut it. Now, the issue and the question is not so much what part of it will you reduce. That's not the point. I'd get rid of the DA, by the way. I think drugs should be legal. I think drugs should be legal. I've heard some lefties disagree with me on this. Drugs should be legal. You should not be putting people in cages for them making a personal choice. And for any time you create some kind of this law in this way that disallows people from being people, you create black markets. You create black markets. Not to mention the drug war wasn't done purely for the sake of, and I'm making an argument for something that was never argued. So fair enough. Fair enough. I feel pressure on that particular point, so I'm making that argument. Yeah, the DEA. The DEA would be on my hit list. All of them people would lose their jobs. And maybe a receptionist somewhere. But the question is, it's the wrong question. The question is not, how much are you going to cut? How much are you going to reduce? It's what are you using it for? Like, what parts of that government, what are you using it for? What are you trying to accomplish? What levers of power do you have to try to accomplish those things you're trying to accomplish? I don't think it's as simple a question as what are you trying to cut? What are you trying to reduce? I would say, though, yeah, DA would be on my hit list. Yeah, the military would be on my hit list. Yes, CIA would be on my hit list. There'll be a few things that would be on my hit list. So, yeah. Rehab is going to be assimilated into automation. I've kind of grown used to the corruption. You shouldn't. I'm sorry, you shouldn't. At the mere hint of corruption, you should be outraged. The public should be outraged. The public should be screaming at the top of its lungs. The moment that you've normalized this, the moment that you've instantiated this, it becomes part of policy. Why are you concerned when we're taking all this money? This is normal. You should be outraged. You should be absolutely outraged. In regards to the military budget, how hard do you think it would be? I think it's virtually impossible at this point. They demand profits, therefore they demand for war. Disagree, you disappeared. Now, whether it's hard or not is besides the point. You do it. Figure out a way to do it and you do it. You cut the budget. We're using nearly $1 trillion a year. Not to mention there are times where the military has spent like $5 trillion over the course of a year messing around with the numbers and not knowing where that money went. Donald Rumsfeld coming out. We've spent $3.2 trillion that we have no idea where it is, or $2.3 trillion. This is insanity. Like, how are you spending this much money? And what are you spending this much money on? The first thing I would do is bring our troops home in those countries. We don't need to be in the Middle East. So yeah, I am cutting the military budget and I'm giving justification to it. We don't need to be over there. It may be difficult to do, but you do it. The difficulty in it is like you alluded to. That's a jobs program. Like, unfortunately, us killing and shooting and dropping bombs, those things are jobs programs. So in those districts, are you going to get a congressman to say, no, I'm not going to spend money on this, when that would demand certain people being fired? It's not necessarily easy. I'm just saying it's necessary. It's a difference in those things. By the way, totally agree with your point of view. Just saying it's insane at the moment. Yeah, you agree. The dollar amounts are just incomprehensible. I agree. It's fucking amazing. You're spending like $1 trillion on military. And that's a mind-blowing amount of money. Not to mention the amount of money you're spending on national security, like internally spying on the citizens itself. That's amazing. It's amazing. I'm blown away that there's not more outrage by this. The American public looks at the number that these guys put out, nearly $1 trillion. They raised it by $80 billion. The school program that Bernie Sanders was talking about to keep debt off of your kids' heads. The kids, the families that you're talking about, saying that, hey, I have a family and Republicans are batshit crazy. I don't know how many kids that you got, but if those kids want to go to school, you can thank the Democrats for not being willing to spend that money to get those kids. $80 billion. Sanders was asking for like $80 billion. They raised that much money to spend on the military after we already spent as much as 9 other governments combined. It's fucking insanity. You would think that the public would be in outrage over that. Are you telling me that my kid could have went to school for the amount of money that you're spending on the military? What are your gains? What are your gains? What are the things that you've accomplished as a military? What are your gains? You've set that world on fire. That's what your gains have been. And you've been justifying yourself by setting fires around the globe. Hey, we have another fire. Looks like we need to put military over there. We need to raise our military budget. We need to raise our military budget. And I'm saying military, but I know it's not them per se. I know it's the Congress, and I know it's these guys in office and these corrupt assholes who are in the Democratic and the Republican Party. So I know it. The military is just doing what they're told. I'm just making this point that these numbers are ungodly. These numbers are ungodly. You would think the public would be in outrage over this stuff. Yeah, Augur, I know. That's what I just said. It's not the military's fault. As POTUS, you would need extraordinary security measures if you try to cut these budgets. I don't care. You need to do it. You would need daily blood tests, electronic surveillance under your direct control. And the war machine is our greatest enemy. Yes, it is. Yeah, that pisses me off. The rich have fabricated the rehabilitation with money like that. Yeah. Fake the Palomo mills. Yeah, but if you need to get one, you got to pay the $50,000. Robert Puke Ray, for that much money, I want military to get the mosquitoes. I know, right? All of these flies. If you're going to get that much cash, at least do something. Something positive. And defense contractors are plantation owners. Yeah. I mean, for the most part, they get corporate welfare. That's all it is. Jeremy Popolowski, spreading democracy. Ha! We have troops around the world to secure resources, and I think we should absolutely pull our military out of the world. We're raping the world. Yes. Robert Puke, right. And CIA buying a newspaper. I don't want my taxes for them. Exactly. Yes, I agree. I agree. I agree. I agree. I agree. All right, guys. I'm going to end this. I don't want this to get too long. Thank you for showing up. I always enjoy these talks. I wanted to highlight that particular point because, like I said, the guy has a damn good point. This thing of there are real world consequences to abdicating support for the Democratic Party. And I'm making the point that the real world consequences for giving that party your support is what you need to be aware of. Maybe not in the immediate moment, but look over the past 20 years. Look over the past 30 years. Explain to me. Explain to me why, looking from the context of a historical context over the past 30 years and the country sliding further and further to the right, and the things that they have in other countries in the West, even though you have the richest country on the planet, are somehow off the table to you. You've been trapped in a scam. You've been trapped in a scam. And for as long as you're going to be so terrified that you don't necessarily want to do anything, meaning the Democrats can do whatever they want and you'll give them your vote because you're so terrified, then they will do anything that they want. That's all I'm saying. So I will leave it at that. And I'm sorry, I'm laughing at Augur. Kiss your low interest rate mortgages goodbye. There are consequences, yes. But what's the world you want? What's the world you want? And are you going to get that world voting for the same thing that you've always voted for? Fear is the problem. Fear is the problem. Oh, Dominique Buscelli, thank you. Pennsylvania legalized medicinal marijuana. The federal government, however, refuses to let the VA doc use it for treatment, even though it's been found to be better for treating PTSD and chronic pain. Give to Big Pharma. If I was in office, that would be done overnight. In fact, Obama should have did it. I'm pretty sure, God damn it, you pull me in. I'm pretty sure Obama understood that the drug war was started as a way for Nixon to attack hippies and blacks. He was scared that those two forces was going to join together and create a political bloc. If you know that, which is true, by the way, if you know that, and you leave office still allowing people to get locked up, people to get put through the ringer of financial difficulties for pot, people put in cages for smoking a plant, that's a failure. I'm sorry, that's a failure. I don't know how you justify that action as a president of inaction. I don't know how you justify it. Particularly being a stoner yourself. At any point, Obama could have been locked up and put in jail himself. He would have never been president. Rand Paul made that point, and Rand Paul was right when he made that point. Rand Paul was right. Oh, girl, I'm saying it should happen, but get ready. You know, there will be consequences. There will be consequences. But by the same token, think of all the positive things that you're talking about. For instance, the amount of money that we spend on military. You cut the military budget. Use part of those resources. Or hell, keep part of the budget. But use part of the resources instead of murdering people that actually building those countries up. If your job or your goal is to actually get rid of terrorism, guess what? Setting fires around the globe creates terrorism. You create terrorism. We do things that cause expenses. Like it's not like we're $20 trillion in debt. That number is ungodly. That number is mind-blowing. Like, it's hard to get across how large that number is. And that number will be okay for the United States, for the amount of money that the United States makes in regards to its GDP, if there was something to show for it. You have fires all around the globe. You are pivoted against North Korea as a nuclear power nation at this point. In one Middle Eastern country after the next, you've set one fire after the next. You have refugees streaming into Europe over the things that this country has done. You have, as a consequence of the refugees streaming into Europe, right-wing governments vying for control in some of those governments to rebuff the people streaming in those countries from our actions in the Middle East. We've set this world ablaze. What do you have to show for the $20 million? You don't have health care, or if you do, you have a shitty version of health care in which your rates are spiking year after year. You don't have high-speed rail, meaning infrastructure in the country. And when you do get some level of infrastructure, the government itself, either state or local, is just giving a bunch of money to corporations and charging you rent, either on the overpasses or anything else. You don't have a green energy New Deal. You don't have any of those things. You don't have high-speed rail. You don't have any of those things. Do you realize how much you pay for flights in this country? Just small stuff. The amount of money you pay for flights to get from point A to point B as opposed to if you were in Europe. The airlines, the prices are much higher here because you don't have actual transportation over land that can compete with the airlines. Meaning, if I need to go to point A to point B, yes, the airlines are going to squeeze me in those seats because you don't have a choice from getting from point A to point B. You don't invest in things in this particular country, and there are consequences all throughout the country for the things that you don't necessarily invest in as a body. What is the point of your government if you can't get shit done as a government? And at this point, I'm talking about people. I'm not talking about the edifice of government itself. I'm talking about you as individuals and you as people. What do you believe the government should do? And do you believe it's doing those things? And whose interests do you believe it's working for? And do you believe that there are consequences? Have there been consequences? They may be invisible, they may be implicit, but there are consequences for having a shitty government that is completely unresponsive to the population. I'm ranting. I'm sorry. I'm ranting. Oh, guys. Coriolis, I can't pronounce your name. I'm sorry. Coriolis. Thank you. I appreciate it. And Fredax, keep going, support the platform, folks. Thank you guys. I really do appreciate it. I always feel self-conscious when somebody gives super chat cash. But I do appreciate it. My wife always says, say thank you and move on. So I'm going to say thank you and move on. yeah, guys, thank you. I appreciate you guys showing up. I'm trying to, if you've noticed, I've been trying to do this earlier. It's like, get off work, get it out the way. That's what I've been trying to do, with the idea of doing the talking in the beginning and then the chat towards the back end. Ideally 30 minutes, but probably an hour. Ideally, that's probably just run our mouths. So probably an hour. Conversation. Yes. Are we fundraising for a new sweater? You earned it, Jamal. Great show and commentary. Thank you, Dominic. I appreciate it. It's funny. When I was talking to what's his name? Joe Firestone. He kind of made this point. He has a PhD. He was like, I thought that you had a degree in this particular thing, and I was like, no, I just like politics, and not just liking politics, like loving this kind of historical context of the stuff, how these things interact. And I tend to be single-minded to a fault. So no, my degree is all over the place. Interdisciplinary stuff. Well, I have a few degrees, but it's not in political science. But I don't think you need a degree in political science to understand politics. And so I appreciate you guys showing up and listening to me run my mouth about my thoughts about this stuff. Not just that, I also appreciate the conversation. So thanks, guys. I appreciate it. And you guys have a good night. Good night, everyone.